Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ziyaad Ebrahim Patel. I'm an attorney practicing in Johannesburg, South Africa. For those that may know me, will be aware that I've been involved in lawfare advocacy and upholding international human rights law, working predominantly in the region of occupied Palestine. The situation of Palestine is extremely tragic. A tragic situation that has not only occurred from now, but from decades-long occupation from the Nakba in 1948. My work involves holding Zionist Israeli commanders and military personnel, as well as Israeli government officials, ministers, accountable for the horrendous crimes that they perpetrate with utter impunity against the Palestinian people, both in Gaza and in the occupied Palestinian territories, and as we are witnessing in the broader Middle East region. Lawfare advocacy and lawfare work has not only been initiated from 2023, when Israel was involved in the perpetration of egregious crimes against humanity, genocide, crimes of aggression and war crimes. Crimes that are prescribed in the Rome Statute, to which South Africa has implemented in this country, and ought to hold those perpetrators of such crimes accountable where crimes are committed with such impunity. Our journey started in 2008-2009 with the Gaza docket. From that time, already Gaza was under siege and blockade following Hamas's political leadership and political election to be mandated to control the Gaza Strip. The war in 2008-2009 was horrendous in the sense that Israel had already been utilizing munitions catastrophic to a civilian population in a densely populated area, such as nail bombs, white phosphorus, and cluster bombs in densely populated areas. And we had witnessed severe trauma and severe injuries to victims, including the majority being children. This impunity carried on when I was mandated to represent a South African journalist, Ziyaad Davids, from Cape Town, when she was aboard the Mavi Marmara in 2010. This flotilla 8 vessel mission had one objective only, and that was to break the siege of Gaza and the blockade and deliver essential humanitarian aid. What transpired thereafter was a tragic consequence of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, having attacked the Mavi Marmara and the flotilla 8 mission of vessels, where at least 10 civilian activists lost their lives in international waters, approximately 84 nautical miles from the coast of Gaza. We are witnessing currently the Sumud flotilla and what has happened in Tunisia and previous flotillas, where the Israeli Navy has either redirected those vessels to the port of Ashdod, bombed these vessels, and pilfered and hijacked the essential humanitarian aid that was destined for the people of Gaza. This is completely and utterly unacceptable. Coming back to the Ziyaad Davids case, we managed, in terms of a mutual understanding and cooperation between South African authorities, predominantly the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit of the National Prosecuting Authority and the Hawks, and in Istanbul with Turkish authorities, where a case was unfolding with the preservation of evidence of hundreds of flotilla victims, to Israeli Navy and Israeli atrocities that were perpetrated in international waters. Ziyaad Davids herself went to Istanbul and tendered evidence as part of the Turkish process of preservation of evidence. In line with our commitments in signing the Rome Statute and implementing it in terms of the International Criminal Court Act, as well as other legislation at our disposal, we managed to get a successful decision whereby the South African Police Services, the Hawks, informed us that 4 warrants of arrest would be exercised, were issued out of the Turkish authorities, and that a red alert would be issued for those commanders if they had to enter South African territory or republic or of the republic, and would be extradited to Turkey to face these egregious crimes that were committed against predominantly civilian activists attempting to break the siege in Gaza. However, this impunity continued in 2014 when the IDF carried out a war in Gaza, and this is where you see these documents becoming relevant. As part of the 2014 war, there was an individual suspect called Dean Samuel Goodson, a South African national and citizen, who went to go and serve in the IDF. Mr. Goodson was very proud to serve the IDF, to fulfill his obligations and his religious faith, and we have evidence of him serving in the IDF, posting social media images of himself, as well as by family members, of their pride in having Dean go to serve in this genocidal army called the Israeli Defense Forces. War crimes were perpetrated, and there were human rights reports as well as UN fact-finding missions reports that emanated that Israel in 2014, like in 2008-2009, were implicated and complicit in the committing and perpetration of egregious crimes, of war crimes against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Submissions were made to our authorities, and in 2019 we received a decision from the National Director of Public Prosecutions, whereby she conveyed to us that she had re-looked at evidence based on a review application that was submitted on behalf of the principal complainant in this case, whom I represent, Mr. Safoudien Bester. And the National Director of Public Prosecutions had messaged us to say that she was reverting this matter for further investigation based on the additional evidence in social media posts that were provided. However, since 2019 to date, we have not received any positive communication from the National Director of Public Prosecutions or any further commitment by our investigating authorities as to what has transpired in terms of a final decision to prosecute Dean Goodson or not. This is utterly unacceptable in the midst of a genocide that is happening in real time, where over 60,000 Palestinians have lost their lives, and of which 50% of them remain children. We see Israel acting with utter impunity also in the Palestinian territories. We see them acting with impunity in the West Bank and in surrounding neighboring countries of Lebanon, Syria, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Yemen, and also now currently in Doha, where this exportation of terrorism, Zionist state-sponsored terrorism, continues unabated. In 2022, I represented Mr. Safoudien Bester and 2 organizations, the Media Review Network and the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign. And having lodged the South African Zionist Terrorism Corridor Probe, we aimed to spotlight the terror-related activities of this Israeli genocidal army and the Israeli government, and uncovered the complicity of Zionist Israeli institutions in South Africa, together with a number of individuals and citizens of this country that go to serve in violation and in contravention of the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act, as well as in violation of the protection of constitutional democracy against terrorism and related activities, in violation also of our ratification of Rome Statute, whereby we have ratified and domesticated the International Criminal Court Act, which addresses crimes of an egregious nature, being namely war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, ethnic cleansing, and crimes of aggression. We also have other acts and legislation that Israel has violated, and also South African citizens and nationals and institutions are violating, such as the prevention of organized crime, where we see that institutions like the Jewish National Fund collect monies and funds and then utilize the absenteeism law, where Palestinians are not allowed back onto their land in the West Bank and in surrounding neighborhoods, and such land is then recirculated to Israeli settlers and funded by monies or funds that the National Fund collects both in South Africa and across other countries and jurisdictions. We also see this situation of Zionist terror network that is being highly trained and traveling to Israel to go and serve in the Israeli Defense Forces and committing the current atrocities as we are witnessing. I have implored our authorities, including our prosecuting authorities and investigating authorities, that this has become a serious security risk to our country, to our sovereignty, and our national territory. And this issue has to be addressed. More importantly, as we are aware that South Africa raised this complaint and brought a case against Israel, the State of Israel, in the International Court of Justice, and preceding that in November 2023, also a criminal referral to the International Criminal Court. What we're seeing and witnessing is a complete disconnect between what South Africa is doing internationally and how it is actually addressing these issues locally and within its own domestic law and within its own legislative framework, where a number of accused suspects were indicted in the South African Zionist Terrorism Corridor probe, which was then extended into the Genocide probe, which was lodged with authorities last year. And to date, we have not received any feedback that was positive that our authorities are addressing these issues of serious national safety and security concerns in holding Zionist civilians, nationals, and citizens accountable for such crimes that are being perpetrated with impunity. This has caused us to bring an extensive application on behalf of Mr. Safoudien Bester and myself as the attorney on record to highlight to the court the inconsistencies and how our authorities and government is dealing with this issue of serious national safety security concerns and the terror threat that it poses. We also have information and have been informed through records that there was no application made in terms of the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act by any IDF individual, as an individual or as a collective, in terms of the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act for approval or authorization. Failing this authorization and approval, they are already in violation of the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act, and there should be punitive measures imposed. But our government and our authorities fail to act despite the ongoing atrocities in Gaza and in the Middle East region, where Israel continues to target individuals, continues to target Hamas politicians who are supposed to negotiate peace but are eliminated. Israel attacks the territorial sovereignty of countries like the Islamic Republic of Iran when it attacks nuclear facilities with complete and utter total disregard for the environment and its consequences. And this has become a dangerous precipice where there's complete and utter impunity, complete disrespect for the rule of law, international norms and standards, that Israel acts as a pariah state. And what we are saying in terms of this court application that shall be brought in the Pretoria High Court is that we are demanding of our authorities that they do what is within their capacity and responsibility and within the legislative framework to hold Israel, Zionist institutions and individuals accountable for crimes that are being committed. In this regard, this application is an extensive application of over 12,500 pages. It contains evidence as well as a record of submissions made over the last decade and more, since 2008-2009, when the Gaza docket, to criminal complaints that were lodged with our authorities, international law resolutions, UN, United Nations and UN Security Council resolutions, human rights reports where Israel is a perpetrator of apartheid, which constitutes a crime against humanity, and incontrovertible evidence of what Israel is perpetrating against a civilian population. We have also made extensive submissions that we need to separate this issue regarding terrorism associated with resistance. Like in South Africa, our freedom was hard-earned and hard-won. And it was hard-earned because there was an armed struggle. International law will never dispute the fact that armed struggle is part and parcel of people's right of self-determination. In this instance, Palestine is under belligerent occupation. There are apartheid practices and colonial imposition on a civilian population. And the right for armed struggle and resistance is closely associated to the right of self-determination. Now, we have seen European countries, including the United States, associate such legitimate aspirations for the right of self-determination in armed struggle against belligerent occupation as forms of terrorism. And we have completely and utterly argued this point in our papers, that this cannot be true under international law. And in fact, the perpetrators of terrorism and state-sponsored terrorism is being committed by those that proclaim to be peacemakers are actually in fact perpetrating this kind of state terrorism, where politicians are targeted, civilians are targeted. We have witnessed in Gaza, journalists are targeted, medical workers are targeted, first responders are being targeted, and medical doctors are being targeted. This is an horrid situation where we've seen complete and utter disregard for universities, schools, public infrastructure, medical facilities, hospitals, infancy centers, and the flagrant violation of women's rights as well, and women having no dignity whatsoever in giving a dignified birth to their child, the bombing of children, the bombing of civilians, the intentional targeting of children and Palestinians close to hospitals. And in fact, in this instance, we have one individual called Aaron Bayhak, who was part of the Ghost Unit, who was discovered by a journalist, Yunus Barawi, that whereby geolocating this Ghost Unit from Gaza City all the way to Khan Yunis, there are confessions by the leader of this unit, called Al-Refrain, where each team was responsible for at least 5 kills. Palestinians were not aware that there was this unit or the sniper unit operating, and were sniping Palestinians off from at least a distance of 1.2 kilometers, where Palestinians thought that they were outside of any combat zone, but they remained a target of the IDF because if they were of adult military age. So we see this utter disregard for human life, and it's absolutely unacceptable. So we are going to the High Court with this application, requesting and demanding that certain measures be put in place, deterrent measures be put in place in relation to Zionist institutions and individuals that are going to serve in the IDF. We're asking for a decision on Dean Goodson that is without prejudice, without fear, and without favor. And we are asking the ministries of government as the security cluster, whereby we have cited the presidency to get involved and intervene in this important case. As genocide unfolds, we have to protect our sovereignty, our constitutional values. We cannot allow South African national citizens and institutions to be operating in this nature. It is unacceptable, and this application addresses those issues. The respondents in this matter would be the National Director of Public Prosecutions, the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit in the National Prosecuting Authority Service, the President of the Republic of South Africa, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, the National Commission of South African Police Services, the Directorate of Priority Crimes Investigation in the South African Police Service, the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, the Minister of Home Affairs, the Department of Home Affairs. These are the respondents being cited. Of importance is that the National Conventional Controls Arms Committee has confirmed that no South African has ever applied to go and serve in the IDF since 2006 to 2023. Henceforth, the Minister of Defense could not authorize or approve any application, as no application was ever before him. So we're seeing this flagrant violation of South African law by these individuals. What we're asking from those that are constable and constable human beings to support this application and this endeavor, and may the Almighty accept our humble efforts as best as we could in bringing truth and justice, in standing for freedom and standing with the people of Palestine and all oppressed people in the world. That lawfare and lawfare advocacy can be a means, and utilizing the law can be a means in attaining and protecting the rights of those that have been infringed. That protection of rights is important, as we must reaffirm the rule of law, the abidance of international law, international humanitarian law, where we are also witnessing that civilians and Palestinians going to certain depots to go and collect food are being targeted by the IDF and by IDF snipers. We are witnessing children being killed. I witnessed a tragic image of a child not older than my daughter's age of 12 or 13, carrying a bucket of water, going to a already destroyed building to deliver the water to a family, and she is then blown up by the IDF. This is an absolute unacceptable state of affairs, and it places our world at a dangerous precipice. So we will reaffirm within our capacity the rule of law, bring this application to the best of our ability, and we know that this application is founded on truth, founded on haqq and on justice. And inshallah, God willing, the people of Palestine will be free, and that Palestine will realize its aspirations as a free people, an unoccupied land, and that Zionism is held to account, and those that are perpetrating these egregious crimes will be held accountable for what they have perpetrated on civilian population. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.